major issues facing Nova Scotians with respect to affordability. Things have changed significantly since we were first elected. Healthcare was the number one issue facing Nova Scotians. It's still really important, but now affordability is right there too. I certainly see it every day when I meet with Nova Scotians from across the province. They've been burdened by a higher cost of living, which they feel every time they make a purchase, every single purchase. The federal government has only added to this by increasing taxes, of course, hitting them with a carbon tax that hurts Nova Scotians. So we have a plan to address the affordability issues. We've already started enacting that plan. When it comes to making generational investments in the future, there's no better investment than the investment in our kids. That's why we initiated the free lunch program for every public school student in the province. We're rolling that out right now. My message to parents is simple. We know it's hard right now. And government can't solve every single challenge you face, but we can darn well make sure that no child goes hungry during the school day. So not on our watch. That's why we've implemented the school lunch program. These are things that make a difference. We're trying to step up to fill these gaps as best we can. And today I was pleased to announce that we're going to do a little bit more to hopefully make life a little bit easier for Nova Scotians with a tax reduction. I shared with Nova Scotians this morning that we've provided notice to the CRA that effective April 1st, 2025, we'll be cutting the HST. This is the first sales tax cut in Nova Scotia's history, and it's a tax cut for every single Nova Scotian. It will help families most of all. So I'm proud of that decision. It took some work, but we got there. So lots on the go on healthcare and affordability. School lunch program, all kinds of other things. So whatever on your mind tonight, press *3, and we'd love to have a chat and answer some questions.
Thank you very much, Premier. And again, just dial *3 if you're looking to ask your questions over the phone. So we'll go to our first question now. We're going to go to Laura from Alsford, who has a question for the Premier about accessing a family doctor. Laura, please go ahead.
Hi, I know you are working hard on healthcare, and I know that you've done some major improvements. I'm new to the area, and it's actually like the first time I've not had a family doctor, and with two small kids, it's nerve-wracking. I know there are clinics in the area, because I called around while I was still on the list, and they say that, yes, we're taking patients, but we can only do it through the system that's in place, I think it's 811. Sorry if I'm saying any of this wrong. And I have to wait for that, even if I'm willing to commute. And as a mom, with small kids, things come up quickly, and the faster they're addressed, the faster you get, the less chronic issue arises. So, I know you're working hard, but is there any way that we could call clinics if we're willing to commute and move far? Like, is there something we can do in that vein, or is there anything even open to that for people who are able to commute to get a doctor? I'll drive 3 hours. I'm fine with that, as long as I can make sure that my kids can be seen effectively. Because Maple is great, but it doesn't help if they can't see or touch your child.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a couple things. Thank you, Laura, for that, and I certainly can hear kind of the emotion in your voice for sure. So a couple of things. We want you to be attached. We want your family to be attached. We're working hard on that attachment. In the meantime, while we get you attached, I think that Chisholm's Pharmacy might be in your community. That's a pharmacy clinic. You can use that. On the virtual care part, I want Nova Scotians to know that when they use virtual care, if the healthcare professional that you're speaking to determines that they want you to see somebody, we can get you into a clinic. It's usually 3 or 4 days into an in-person visit through one of our clinic structures. So those resources are there, but we want you to be attached. In September, we had the highest attachment of people from the Need a Family Practice list, and it was a significant month, and I believe we'll see that progress going forward. So the attachments are happening. I'm not exactly sure. You mentioned that maybe you had to call 811 and go on that registry and to come off the registry. I'm not exactly sure on that part. I'll figure that out, and if we get your email address, we can shoot you back specifically. but my understanding is if there is capacity in your community, if there is a doctor who's taking patients, I believe they can take them direct. But we'll make sure that that's the case, that they can do that. If that's not the case now, we can address that. But we have the attachment is happening. There are, I think, 10 new doctors starting in the province in October. So we're dealing with the here and now. The recruitment is working, and we're also building capacity in existing clinics by helping doctors, by providing additional resources. Maybe it's a nurse resource. Maybe it's another type of resource that helps them take on and see more patients. But so there's a lot happening. I believe we're right at the cusp of some real positive momentum. I do feel that way. And we're starting to see that attachment. We're starting to see things take place. But you asked a very specific question about the practical part of getting attached, and do you have to go through 811 and through the registry? And I don't actually know the answer to that, but we'll find out. But it should be a smooth play. If you call a local physician or a nurse practitioner and they have space, then they should be able just to take you. And if that's not the case, we'll make sure it is. But I really appreciate you reaching out tonight, Laura.
Thank you, Premier. Next, we're going to Michelle, who's in Annapolis County. Michelle has a question for the Premier around how current policy aligns with the federal Conservatives. Michelle, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I really appreciate these town halls. I walked into a conversation initially about adopting the child lunch care and then so on and so forth. And so the child lunch care is a Liberal policy. HST was a federal Conservative policy. And I'm really interested, on how those two align with the current federal policies, because one, you're taking money out of the system, and two, you're putting money into the system. And how you align with the federal Conservatives.
Thank you, Michelle. So a couple of things. So I'm not personally a member of any federal political party. I think it's kind of an important distinction that surprises some people. But in the party system, like the Liberal Party, for example, if you're a member of the Nova Scotia Liberal Party, you're automatically a member of the federal party. It's one party. I believe the NDP is the same. For our side, I'm the leader of the Nova Scotia Progressive Conservative Party. That's it. Like the Conservative Party of Canada is a separate party, different membership thing. I'm not a member of that party. I only focus on what matters to Nova Scotia and standing up for Nova Scotians. And right now I have lots of things to stand up for Nova Scotians for with the current federal government around illegal fishing, obviously the carbon tax, around the isthmus, proper funding, and there's no shortage of issues. And some things, of course, we get along, and that's great. But where it's time for me to stand up for Nova Scotia, I'll do that too. I do that with Prime Minister Trudeau, and if there's another Prime Minister who's from another party, I'm sure it'll be the same. Some things will get along, and sometimes it's stand up to Nova Scotia's time. So I don't know about those two specific federal policies and how they interweave together in terms of your question. But I know on the HST is a significant, than there is when you pay HST when you buy something. There's some of it goes to the federal government and some of it comes to the province. There's a provincial portion of that, right? So I know that the provincial portion that we get from HST is our second largest source of revenue. It's a big source of revenue for the province. The biggest one would be, of course, personal income tax. So when we make a cut to the HST, that's a cut to our provincial share. I think the cut I announced today is about $260 million of revenue that we would have otherwise collected as a province, but that we're leaving in the hands of Nova Scotians. So it's a big number for sure, but it's time to cut that HST. That's why we're doing that. That's why we've given notice of that to the CRA that it will happen April 1st. But I'm sorry, I'm not more familiar with the other policy that you mentioned. But I would just kind of put a fine point on it and say that I'm only interested in Nova Scotia, and I'm not a member of any federal party. But I hope that answers at least part of your question. But I really appreciate you joining us tonight, Michelle.
Thank you, Premier. And a reminder to those who are looking to ask their questions over the phone, now is the time to dial *3. Up next, we have a question from Gloria Beaton. Gloria would like to ask the Premier a question related to international doctors and their credentialing in the province. Gloria, please go ahead.
Hello, Premier. I wondered if we're bringing in doctors from other countries, and I know we need doctors, but are we checking their accreditation or whatever, making sure that they have the same standards that we do? I have found myself that my doctor retired, and I've got an international doctor, and I find there's quite a difference in what they look at and their interaction with the patient. I've lost both my daughters, and I myself am not well. So I would like to know that when we bring them in, they do have to pass some sort of tests that make sure that they're as good as the ones we have here.
Yeah, well, thank you, Gloria. And this is a really important question for sure. We never want to lower the standard of care, for sure. We cannot lower the standard of care. Yes, they have to meet the bar. And Dr. Gus Grant, who's the president of the College of Physicians, who does the licensing, he's the person who the college signs the license and says you can practice here or you can't. We're in total agreement. Like there's no lowering of the bar. We need to have the standard of care stay high. So I think with the program we just announced for where international medical graduates could come here to our assessment clinic, I would call this, and some people would maybe not strictly agreed with this, but I will call this assessment clinic almost like a third medical school. So we have Dalhousie Medical School, the Cape Breton Medical School is a new initiative that we started. This assessment clinic, which is focused on doctors from other countries to bring them here so we can assess their competency, so we can really credential them and see them in an environment where they're interacting with patients, but they're being assessed by experts. So that's all part of making sure that we are properly assessing their credentials. So this is really important. And the other thing I want to say is that there are a lot of Canadians, a lot of Nova Scotians who went to medical school somewhere else, maybe in the Caribbean. A lot of Nova Scotians go down there, or some other country. And it's been really hard for them to come back home. You think about coming back and signing up for possibly an 18-month assessment period. At the end of 18 months, they may tell you you're good enough to go, or they may tell you you can't practice here, right? But 18 months, imagine making that commitment of time. So that's a big ask. But with this new international medical graduate, so that's focused on international medical graduates, they are doctors in another jurisdiction, another country, focusing on them and offering them the opportunity to be assessed in 12 weeks, that's a big difference. That will open up a lot of opportunities. And I would say that a lot of people a lot of doctors who use that will probably be Canadians that are practicing in the States or Australia or maybe New Zealand or the UK or something. So, but this is absolutely, we cannot lower the standard of care, and we need to be very careful on how we assess and license people. So I appreciate that reminder, Gloria, and thank you for calling in and sharing that.
Thank you. Next, we're going to Dom, who's calling in from Lunenburg. And Dom has a question around decisions made regarding the Coastal Protection Act. Dom, please go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Premier. The action in withdrawing the Coastal Protection Act, let alone not enacting it or enforcing it, whatever the right word is, leaves me gasping. My wife worked for 20 years for the Department of the Environment. Coastal protection has been on the agenda, and nothing has been done about it. It's it's the glory of Nova Scotia, and it's being dribbled away. The developers and pollution, and it just makes me sick.
A couple of things. Thank you, Dom. And I would definitely assure you that, like all Nova Scotians, I love our coastline, and I'm certainly committed to protecting it. I share the sense of responsibility and to protect it, and the pride we have in it. So 100% we do. And don't remember, one of the first things we did as government is protect Al's Head. So I think we all share that concern and love for our coast that you're talking about. So specifically with respect to the Coastal Protection Act. So this was an act that passed the legislature in 2019. It was never proclaimed. So that means in 2019, the government of the day was the Liberals. They did not proclaim it. In 2020, the government of the day was the Liberals. They did not proclaim it. In 2021, half of that year, the government of the day was Liberals. They did not proclaim it. And then we came on and we said, well, we're not going to just ignore this. We have to do something. So the something that we've done is take the position that we can work with Nova Scotians, we can work with individuals, we can work with municipalities, we can work with property owners to first off educate them about what could happen to our coastlines with maps, flood maps out over 50, 60 years and how the coast may change. So we can kind of educate them with that and educate them with their own responsibilities. So there's a big campaign, I guess I would say, on that's happening right now to work with Nova Scotians and work with municipalities. And we're seeing municipalities step up with some of their own bylaws and regulations, and I think that's a good thing. And the reason I think that's a good thing is we have 13,000 kilometers of coastline. It's incredibly diverse. Some of it is sandy beach, some of it is rocky cliffs, some of it's bogs and everything in between. But almost every inch of that coastline is different. So imagine sitting in an office in Halifax and issuing the edict that one size fits all for the whole 13,000 kilometers. When instead, you could work with those closest to it, the property owners, the Nova Scotians, or the municipalities to say what is best for your piece of coastline. So that's the approach we're taking. And we'll work down that path. And if it turns out that turned out to be the wrong path, I think I've shown I'm not afraid to change course on certain things. But I just want you to know we all care about our coastline. We all want to preserve our coastline. We all can see that our climate is changing. That's obvious to all of us. And I think it's fair to ask, why didn't the government proclaim it in 2019, which is before me, or 2020 or 2021 before me? And I think it is because they realized the diversity of the coast required a bit more of a fine act than some sledgehammer from Halifax. So I share your concern. I share your emotion over it. I believe we're taking a path that is good and will work. But as I say, if it's not, then we'll work with Nova Scotians on a better one. But for today, I believe educating Nova Scotians and working with Nova Scotians is the way forward. But this is a real important topic, and I'm really glad that you raised it, Dom. Thank you for that.
And thank you, Premier. Next, we're going to go to Bernice Livingston, calling in from Glace Bay. Bernice's question is around supports for tourism, specifically in the Cape Breton area. Bernice, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My concern is that we don't put enough into Cape Breton for tourism and for ourselves. Like the beaches, Dominion Beach is terrible. Going around the Cabot Trail, if you don't get there before the 1st of October, you're lucky to get a place to eat or stay. They close far too early, as far as I'm concerned, because those leaves are one of our biggest selling points. I'd just like to see more money invested into tourism.
Thank you, Bernice, and wow, what a beautiful province we live in from one end to the other. You're absolutely right, and certainly Cape Breton is a remarkable part of the province. Some of literally the world's best golf courses, the world's best are here, and they're in Cape Breton. And you're right with the changing of the leaves and the colors are just a remarkable time of year for the kind of the shoulder tourism season, I guess we'd say. There's incredible opportunities there. And we do see Celtic colors, and we see some of those events happening. But I absolutely agree with you. We need to promote our tourism more. This is actually one of the driving reasons that when we took government, we took some steps to kind of support the film industry and I'm going to say fix a mess that was left there. And we put in some credits for filming outside in what we would call more rural areas And MLA Johnny White was at caucus today talking about this exact issue, Bernice, and certainly about the film industry. And the reason I come back to the film industry is what a way to showcase our province on big screens and little screens all over the world. And they see these beautiful places and they say, hey, I want to go there. The Curse of Oak Island has done incredible things for tourism in Nova Scotia. The Lighthouse has done incredible things for tourism in Nova Scotia. And I know there's a couple things filming in your neck of the woods right now as well that I think will actually draw people there. But your point about making sure that we invest in the things that matter is important, and our tourism industry matters to us. So we are taking steps to invest, not just through the film industry, but I know that the ferry from Yarmouth has a tourism reach that spreads across the province as well. So that's why we've kind of taken steps to continue that. But you're absolutely right. Tourism is important. Dominion Beach is a beautiful place, and lots of others on Cape Breton and around Nova Scotia are as well. But thank you for coming on tonight and just kind of reminding me and pointing me to the importance of that.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next question now, and we're going to move to Rick, who has a question around immigration and its impacts on infrastructure in the province. So, Rick, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Premier.
Rick?
I think you're doing a great job. I voted for you. I will continue to vote for you. You recently made some comments for the feds to send some money with the immigration. I really applaud that comment. I know we need immigration. I know we need the tax dollars, but I'm wondering if we could somehow slow it down a bit until the infrastructure, the houses and the roads catch up. I mean, I live in Middle Sackville. It used to take me half an hour, 40 minutes to get downtown Halifax. It now takes me an hour and a half, to get to a doctor's appointment. So we need these people. We love these people, but can we slow it down or get some more federal money so that we can get the infrastructure to support them? And I'm hearing they're not very happy when they're getting here either. This is not what they were sort of envisioning. The cost of housing and whatnot. So that's just all my comments on that.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you for the kind comments off the top there. I really, really appreciate that. Look, you're absolutely spot on. I completely agree with you. The population growth, we need to plan for the population growth. That means the housing, the infrastructure, all those types of things. And our population has been growing. I think it grew by about 2% over the time that I've been premier. So over the last 3 years, it's grown by about 2%. So on a million people, 2%, it's a good number of people. So we need to plan for it. We need to be strategic about it. So just on the immigration itself, I just want you to know a couple of things. So we've been very targeted, and certainly we've been fine-tuning that target as we've went along here. But as we sit here today, our immigration is focused exclusively on healthcare professionals and those working kind of in the skilled trades. We need our healthcare professionals, and we need the skilled trades people to help us build the houses and roads and meet those labor demands in that market. So we've been very, very focused on those two streams. But you're right. The growth puts a stress on the infrastructure, and certainly the traffic around Halifax, but certainly other areas of the province. It's pretty staggering. So when I used to hear all the time that for years and years and years, government knew there was a healthcare problem coming. They knew what the demographics were going to be, short doctors, but they knew for years and years, and they never did anything, right? So we've been very focused on we're going to do something. We're not going to look the other way. So we have been very focused on healthcare. Now I'm hearing, look, government knows, everybody knows we have big needs for roads and overpasses and interchanges and transportation. And I would say this to you, Rick, I will not look the other way from that either. So we don't want you to spend an hour and a half going to the doctor and an hour and a half getting back, time away from your family and time away from your life and stuff. So we understand those challenges. And it is all interwoven together. You're right. So we'll try to be strategic and smart on our immigration, but we also understand that the what I would call the infrastructure needs, the investments in roads and buildings and all that stuff, we have to be smart and strategic on that too. But you're right. Thank you for the kind words, and I appreciate the nudge to focus on some of those things too.
Thank you. And a reminder for those looking to join by the phone, now is the time to hit *3 so you can enter the queue to ask the Premier your questions. Right now we're going to move to Digby County with a question from John. John has a question for the Premier around poaching in St. Mary's. John, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Premier. I'm sort of disgusted with the poaching that goes on in St. Mary's Bay here all summer long in a closed area. And that's where the lobsters from offshore come in to breed. And poachers are allowed to go out there. The fisheries isn't doing much here all summer long. They're bringing in loads of lobsters, and nothing's being done. The people that are going out in the fisheries boat are getting threatened by the poachers, so they can't do much about that. And they call for the federal guys to go out, and they just don't do nothing. I just don't understand it. It boggles my mind.
It also boggles my mind. Our traditional industries, fishing, farming, forestry, are incredibly, incredibly important to our economy. They'll always be part of our economy, and they're incredibly, incredibly important. So when something puts one of those industries at risk, it's of great concern to all Nova Scotians. And I think what's happening in our fisheries is it has a risk, as you say, around the spawning and all of those issues. And so our provincial Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture, Minister Smith, he's been up to Ottawa to speak to the federal minister, and he's more kind than I am in his description, but I would just say that he was very, very disappointed with the lack of understanding from the federal government of how important this is to us. So we will continue to push on them. DFO needs to step up, and that means that the federal government needs to support the DFO workers that are here. The waters need to be policed. So this is it's an important issue. It's an issue that's on a list of grievances that I would say I have with the federal government. I don't believe. I often say that the isthmus issue, where the federal government is, that's an $800 million fix. If that was in Quebec, Prime Minister Trudeau would have paid that $800 million on day one. Instead, he's trying to give us a runaround in Nova Scotia and pay like half. If this illegal fishing was happening in another part of the country where Mr. Trudeau had more votes in mind, he would be addressing it. So what they're doing on the isthmus, what they're doing on the illegal fishing, what they're doing on a whole number of things, it's really disappointing to me. And it is one of the reasons that there is so much chatter about a possible election in this province. I'm just going to speak frankly, the federal government, as long as the federal government won't take Nova Scotia seriously, it really undermines our ability to get a fair deal from them on things like policing our waters, right? And right now we have our federal Liberal members of Parliament. They're not standing up with Nova Scotians on these issues. They're standing with their own party and many other opposition members here in Nova Scotia. They're also undermining the position of Nova Scotians, and it's a difficult situation. So I agree with you. I share your concern on this one. We do need this is an area where we do need the federal government to step up and prioritize the issue on illegal fishing, but many others for sure. But John, thanks for bringing that important issue to us tonight.
Thank you. We're now going to go to Wayne, who's calling in from Bedford. Wayne has a question for the Premier around Highway 102 and its current condition. Wayne, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Premier. It's an honor to speak to you. I just have concerns about the 102 highway. It's got to be the most traveled highway in the province, and it's full of potholes and ruts from the trucks. I used to have a car which had low-profile tires, man. If you didn't have your hands on that wheel, those ruts will take you and throw you into the other lane. And I think the solution to it, where it is the most traveled by the trucks from the container terminal and stuff coming down from Toronto and Montreal, the solution is to make it concrete. And there's a strip in the valley that they did as an experiment, and I think it's faring fairly well after about 20, 25 years, and with very little to low maintenance. I know a friend who used to work for the Department of Highways, and I said, why isn't that concrete? He says, well, the asphalt lobby, would kick up such a big stink that's why they don't do it. But, in the interests of Nova Scotians, that one particular strip, I think, should be concrete. It would cut your costs immensely for maintenance, and it'd be a lot safer without those truck ruts.
Well, listen, thank you, Wayne. The honor's mine, and thank you for being a solutionist and coming with an idea on how to fix it. So I don't know that the pricing and the costing on the asphalt versus concrete and certainly on the maintenance side, but it's what you're saying seems to make sense. So I'm happy to take that away and look at it. But I just want you to know safety is the top priority for when it comes to our roads and our highways and Nova Scotians. We have a significant capital budget every year that we invest in roads and bridges, and it's almost in the range of $1.5 billion, $1.6 billion. It's a significant amount of money every single year. That, I think, when I took government, that budget was in the order of magnitude of $1 billion. So we've increased it dramatically every single year. We'll continue to do that till we catch up and make sure that that we keep up on the maintenance and stuff. The concrete thing is an interesting idea and perhaps a timely idea. I will tell you, Wayne, because that is the 102, especially coming into HRM, is a significant piece of road that is well traveled, and there is talk of looking at expanding that highway, so it would be 3 lanes in maybe both directions, but maybe at least one or so. So while we look at major projects like that, and that would be a major project, and also more on ramps and off ramps at different areas, so we get people on there and off more frequently to help with some of the traffic and get them where they're going quicker. So I just tell you that because it is an active discussion, and now as those discussions are happening, I'm happy to say to them, well, are we looking at the material that we're using, and this might be a time. So it's a timely discussion, and I thank you for raising it. But the major highways and roads into the city are ones we're continuing to look at as to how do we move people and give them more of their time back that they're wasting in their cars right now as they travel, and certainly how do they move safely. We don't have to worry about a pothole putting you into the next lane and maybe hitting somebody. So thank you for your kind words there, Wayne, and I appreciate you raising that.
Thank you. We're now going to go to Elizabeth Lee Nelson calling in from East Dalhousie. Elizabeth has a question around poor cell service in their area and what's being done to improve it. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Good morning, or good afternoon, Premier. We are unable to have cell phone service in our location. We're on Lake Torment, and some areas do get on our road, get cell service, but we're just over a little hill that we can't get it. I've been trying to deal with Bell for TV problems, and they keep saying, go on your cell phone so we can disconnect your other devices so we can deal with it. Well, nobody seems to realize just how important cell phone service is until something happens. We've also heard that they are thinking of withdrawing landlines. And if that's the case, you're going to have a lot of people here that are unable to have a cell phone, so therefore we'll have no communication for emergency services, etc. Is there any way we can get more coverage? Because it is getting to be a necessity not a luxury.
No, thank you, Elizabeth. It is definitely a necessity for lots of reasons. Safety, first and foremost. So, I guess a couple of things. If you talk about, let's talk about internet and cell. I think the province has made significant progress on internet, and even making grants available to people to connect to satellite internet where that's available. So I think we made good progress on there. We have not made good progress on the cell file. And satellite cell phone coverage, where the satellite's working good for the internet, it's not there on cells yet. And I've done quite a bit of work on this file. I thought, well, it can't be that far away in this day and age. But they tell me that a good functioning cell service through satellites that would be similar to the internet is at least 4 or 5 years away. Like it's further away than I thought, and it's not something we can just wait for. So we have been trying to work with the major carriers to get them to put more towers. So there'd be more cell towers, which would improve the coverage. And that's been a difficult discussion, let's say. We have our own frustrations in dealing with some of these organizations, and we've certainly had some frustrations. So trying to get them to put towers in areas where they just say, well, there's not enough people there, so the business case isn't there, we're not going to do it. So we've now, actually about a month and a half ago, the province of Nova Scotia announced that the province would put up cell towers in certain areas. I'll have to look and see if there might be one that covers your area, but I know that we did extensive work to see where the gaps were, and then we located where the best, we can get the most bang for the buck on the towers. And I think the investment, I don't have the number to hand, but I think it's about a $40 million investment on behalf of the province to put these towers up. So it's not insignificant. It is real money. And that's a process that's been approved. We put the money there. Now we're kind of, we're working through the supply chain to get the towers, to get the people to put the towers up and all that type of stuff. But so I'm hoping that would be a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for you at your home and your neighbors and your community. But I want you to know that there will be a number of towers erected around the province, put up by the province, because we can't wait for somebody else to do it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna get to work on it, and that will improve coverage dramatically and hopefully in your area. But we can certainly check on that.
Thanks. Up next, we're going to go to Patricia Moore, who's calling in from Westport. Patricia has a question regarding concerns to the quality of education and standards in our schools today. Patricia, go ahead with your question.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Premier. I think you're doing a great job, and I'll vote for you again. My question is about the education standards in the province. It was a long, long time ago that when anybody was educated in Atlantic Canada, they were prime choice for jobs right across the country. And people knew they were hiring somebody not only with a great education, but also with a work ethic. And sadly, it seems to me that the standards have dropped when, kids they're not being taught to write, for one thing, but on top of that, they seem to be, and not 100% for sure, but an awful lot of them can't. They have no math skills. They never heard telepunctuation. Grammar is atrocious, and I'm very concerned that I think that education should be what the schools stress, rather than any special interest group coming in with different kinds of ideas. But I think schools should be for education only, and anything else belongs in the family.
Yeah, I thank you, Patricia. Thank you for those kind words too. I really appreciate that. So look, we have our kids are just as smart as they were back when you're referring to, right? And we have smart kids, and we have dedicated teachers. So when you have smart kids and dedicated teachers, you should be producing a real quality graduate. And I think that that's not always the case. So we have to look at what may be an impediment to that, right? So a couple of steps we've taken that I believe will make a big difference in the fullness of time, and are making an immediate difference, are the cell phone ban in classrooms. I think that I actually had somebody just tell me the other night that they had been a guest lecturer for some junior high students on a lecture that they do every year. They go in and visit these kids, and they said, I couldn't understand. The kids were so engaged. They asked more questions. It was an hour session. It went an hour and 15 minutes. And he said, I was thinking about what might that be. And then he realized, well, nobody was on their phone. They were all actually listening and engaged, right? So I think that will have a big impact across the whole education system. And I'm actually hearing from students too, that it's helping them focus. So that's number one. Number two, the school lunch program I think is really important too, because it's hard to learn when you're hungry. So that school lunch program will help set kids up in the proper environment for learning. So there's a couple of things, but look, there's broad discussions to be had about the curriculum and the learning techniques, the early learning, the arithmetic, all those things, and we did. The Minister of Education reaches out to teachers, tries to meet with teachers in schools and stuff. And we had this program, Ideas for Education. And we asked teachers and people working in the school system just for what are some ideas that we can use, that we can implement, and we can test them out, test and try them. And we had we had such good feedback from teachers, and a lot of them were around different curriculum ideas, but different teaching techniques and stuff, and we started to pilot them. And as they show success, we start to roll them out to other areas. So look, we all care about the quality of the education that our kids are receiving. We all care about the safety. Everybody should be safe in the schools, and those that are working the schools need to be safe, and all of those things. So it's something that we're trying to work really closely with teachers and people working in the school system, and families and students themselves to make sure that we set them up for success. But provincial priorities, healthcare, education, we talked a bit of roads and stuff. These are all major focuses, and we have to keep them in focus. But I really appreciate you calling in tonight, Patricia, and joining the conversation and talking about that.
Thank you, Premier. We're now going to Steve, who's calling from Kingston. Steve has a question regarding the creation of safe energy by tidal power and nuclear generation. Steve, go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Premier. Steve Hemingway from the beautiful Annapolis Valley. I'm curious about the province's interest in providing reliable energy that is safe. And I'm thinking specifically of nuclear energy, but also tidal power. What has happened with our failed projects there?
Thank you, Steve. And it is a beautiful, beautiful part of the province indeed. So thank you for safe, reliable, clean energy. That these are a key thing. We need them to drive our economy. We need them just to have good, livable communities. Nuclear power is part of that equation. It has to be. It just absolutely has to be. So right now, and also for Nova Scotia, there's lots of potential in that space. And I know other provinces and other jurisdictions are looking at some of these small modular systems for nuclear power. We're very interested in that as well. So it will be part of the grid. It needs to be part of the grid. It's a discussion that's happening for sure. On the tidal stuff, the tidal and the wind potential, we have tremendous wind speeds offshore and onshore. The offshore wind speeds are absolutely remarkable, world class. So when you look at tidal and you look at some of these wind speeds, the potential that we have to be world leaders and really an energy powerhouse in the green hydrogen space, we have significant projects and a lot of money that's been invested in these projects in Nova Scotia. We can be an absolute leader in clean energy, in the clean energy that the world is looking for. So we have to get from where we're at today and transition through in a way that is affordable for people. But we have to make that transition in a smart way. But the potential is so significant. The tidal stuff, the Bay of Fundy, is the envy of the world. Any other jurisdiction would love to have that potential. The Bay of Fundy, if you took every single river in the world, and added them together, you may come close to the strength of the Bay of Fundy at the changing of the tides. It's right there, and it's literally clockwork, and it's untapped. And imagine when it can be tapped. So the technologies haven't got there. There's been, as you say, a couple failed projects there, but there's lots of innovation happening in that space. And when we can tap that in a safe, clean, sustainable way, it can really change the economy of this province. So nuclear, tidal, wind, green hydrogen, these are all I think, opportunities for our province, opportunities that need to be done right, but they're opportunities and great potential for our province. So I'm excited about them, and I appreciate you asking about them tonight.
Thank you, Premier, and thank you so much to everybody who called in this evening. That is unfortunately all the time we have together, so I hope everyone has a wonderful night. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.